Welcome to this lunch. Welcome to this lunchtime talk, School at Home, a webinar put on by the McCAM Development Center to caregivers of children with exceptional needs. So we are delighted to welcome our two presenters, Dr. Pauline Watson-Campbell and Miss Candice Ray. And I am now going to invite Miss Dr. Campbell to start our session. We have to zoom right in, pardon the pun, because we only have 1 hour to cover this very important aspect that we're all wondering about. And so we're going to zoom right in and invite Dr. Pauline Capson to give an introduction, and then the presenters will go right in and give their presentations. Dr. Watson Campbell?
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Armstrong. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, let me introduce Mrs. Armstrong. She is Margaret Armstrong, and in fact, a past parent of McCAM. And what is really good about her being our moderator today is that she has actually been doing homeschooling, or she did homeschooling for a very long time. You know that today our focus is really on children with exceptional needs in this homeschool environment. And I believe everybody would agree with me that this is a new norm and that, we are finding our way. This COVID-19 virus was not planned for. And so we just have to find a way to function now that really will benefit our children as they continue the learning process. So we actually thought about this webinar because we were getting some responses or reactions from some of our parents, because McCAM's school program is running, online as well. And so some of our parents have been frustrated. Some are very happy with it. And I would dare say a couple of them have basically decided that they cannot manage because their children with exceptionalities was just too much for them to guide what was happening at home. So today we are hoping to just talk a little bit about, what we think are some good points for you to understand. And so I'm going to hand over right now to Miss Candice Ray, and she's going to talk to you first about some of the behavioral issues.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so we're gonna jump right in. Okay, so again, as you can see, the 3 topics that we're covering today are the nature of behaviors, the home environment and learning, and then we'll close off with self-care. Okay, so what are exceptional needs? When we talk about exceptional students, we refer to children who fall outside of what we classify as normal or typical. These students learn differently from others. They might have unique learning styles, unique talents, or unique behaviors. Exceptional needs includes a wide array of things, such as neurodevelopmental disorders, and we classify things like ADHD, autism, and Down syndrome as neurodevelopmental disorders. We have physical disabilities such as hearing or visual impairments, learning disabilities such as dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and we have behavioral or emotional disturbances such as oppositional behaviors, aggression, etc. And then we have, of course, our gifted children. So a lot of times when we talk about exceptional needs, we think about the negatives, but there are gifted children who are considered to be high achievers, or what we would call in Jamaica extremely bright. So that's also classified as exceptional. What are the features of exceptional behavior? So what are some of the things that we might expect to see from children who have exceptional needs? These things can include difficulty reading, which the term is dyslexia, and then you have difficulty writing, which is dysgraphia, and you have difficulty with math, which we call dyscalculia. You can also see these children who work at a very slow pace. They have trouble paying attention. They're very hyperactive. They can be aggressive. And then you have some children who have poor muscle tone, which means they have difficulty holding the pencil. They don't write well because they can't grip the pencil. You have poor judgment, poor emotional control. They throw tantrums for the simplest things. They don't know how to control themselves. Poor problem solving skills, extremely impulsive. They just do things on the fly. They can be very rigid and inflexible. These children can appear to lack motivation or be bored. So those are just a small number of the features that we might see. So this is not an exhaustive list. So in a typical classroom setting now, once the child has been diagnosed, before COVID, there would have been accommodations in the classroom. So these accommodations would have been short lessons. So the teachers would have been expected to maybe break up the sessions into maybe 15-minute intervals, or they get 5-minute breaks and so on. These children would have had additional time on their tests and exams. We would have had accommodations for reading, writing, and math, which would include things like visual aids, assistive technology, audiobooks, recording the sessions, or then they would have even had a scribe in exam settings. So that was before COVID. Now that we are hit with COVID, which was unexpected, it might be difficult for these accommodations to be made at home. So now, what are some of the behaviors that you might be seeing at home? Children might be avoiding the lessons and activities. You might notice that your child becomes very agitated before or during a lesson. They might get up from their seat very often. They go to the bathroom often. They're not listening to their teachers online. They're not moving at the same pace as the class. And they have incomplete or rushed work. They're running around the house like they're on steroids, and they're making a mess, or they're very disorganized, and they're throwing a lot of tantrums. So these are some of the behaviors that you might be noticing and struggling with at home currently. So on to the core aspects of behavior intervention. So now that we've mentioned these problematic behaviors, what are some of the things that you have to keep in mind in order to manage or modify these behaviors? So I have 4 key things listed, but we're going to start with patience. So patience is key. I know it is difficult, but you have to try as best as possible to be calm. So you have to speak to your child in a very calm tone, because even though we're trying to correct their behavior, when you're scolding them, if you're using abrasive language or you're shouting, the child is going to feel bad, and that can negatively impact someone's self-esteem. So you have to bear in mind that behavior change is a learning curve, and it's going to take time. And also, if you're modeling behavior, you can't be shouting at the child, because they're just going to do what you do. Secondly, for awareness. So you need to help your child to become mindful that they're different from others. And a lot of times we want to avoid these differences because we see these differences as being something bad. But when your child knows that they're different, it also improves their self-esteem. Because let's be frank, if you don't notice the difference when they go to school, other children will notice the difference, or other teachers will notice the difference. And oftentimes these children are teased. So if you get your child to have that level of awareness, that can actually have a positive impact on their self-esteem. So at the end of the day, you need to help them to understand that their differences make them unique, and you need to help them to know that they're special. Number 3, alternative behaviors. So this refers to what we like to call substitutes or replacement behaviors. What is the purpose of finding an alternative behavior? It's to replace the unwanted actions. So for example, if you have a child that shouts, the replacement behavior would be to replace the shouting. So you're going to teach the child you're going to say, use your inside voice. So one of the things that we like to do in behavior intervention, we don't like to say do not. We like to say the statement in a positive way. So if you don't want the child to shout, don't say do not shout. Tell them what to do. Say, use your inside voice. That's just a small example. And another way that you can use replacement behavior. So say, for example, you have a child that gets angry easily and they like to throw tantrums, or maybe they punch the wall or they break things. You might want to replace that with an object. So for example, a stress ball, something that they can squeeze when they get really angry. And the fourth thing would be praise. Praise, praise, praise. As the Jamaican saying goes, encouragement sweetens labor. So whenever the child does something correct or they're using up the strategies that you're teaching them, don't forget to praise. Behavior intervention strategies now. So I have 5 things listed. These are some simple things that you can do at home for yourself. So the first one that I have highlighted here is emotions. For emotions, you need to help your child to understand. You need to help them to identify emotions. So for the purpose of this discussion, I'm going to say that there are 5 main emotions. You have happy, sad, angry, anger. Wait, I said that already. Anger, happy, sad, fear, and disgust. So those are the 5 basic types of emotions. So once you teach your child that emotions run on a continuum, you have to help them to be able to identify how they're feeling in the moment. Once they're able to identify how they're feeling, then you need to go into how to manage these feelings. Now, this is where the coping strategies come in, such as coloring, deep breathing, walking away, writing down how I'm feeling, etc. So there are several strategies, and it's always best to have them pick 2 that they're going to use ahead of time. So you need to settle on what you're going to do before something happens, so that when something does happen, they already know what to do. And I know that this seems like in your face, obvious, but we often take for granted that children know how to handle their emotions, or they know how to identify emotions. But this is something that you have to teach just like any other behavior. And at McCAM, we actually have a social skills intervention program where we go into schools and we teach children about emotion. So secondly, I have problem solving skills. So you need to help your child to understand that there is more than one way to solve a problem. So a lot of times you might have a child that's very rigid. They like to do things one way. However, you need to talk through things with them. So for example, you can say, what do you think about this? Or challenge them to think of 2 ways to solve a problem, and then talk through it and help them to choose the better option. And you can also do problem solving activities to help strengthen this skill, such as games like Rubik's Cube or playing puzzles, etc. Number 3, repeating instructions. You may find that you have to repeat yourself a whole lot. And this is because some of our children might process information very slowly. or they're easily distracted, and it makes it difficult for them to focus on what it is that you're saying. So one of the things that you can do is whenever you give an instruction, say to the child, before you go, what did I just say? Just repeat it for me. What did I just say? So that you can gauge whether or not they understood your instruction. For number 4, I have rules. So in a typical classroom setting, the teacher is likely to have rules. So if the children are at home, it only makes sense that they'll have rules at home as well. So you need to outline the expected behaviors clearly, and you can make it fun. You can do a rules chart and put it up on the wall at home. And you also need to make it clear what the rewards and consequences are for those behaviors. And to make it fun and to gain compliance from your child, you can decide together what these rewards and consequences will be. And finally, I have play. So I know that it might be very inconvenient to us as adults to have children running around and playing, but that is an essential part. That's an essential activity to children. So children actually do need to run, jump, and so on, and climb. And the importance of play is that it actually improves imagination, dexterity, physical and cognitive strength. And there are also emotional and social benefits to playing as well. And the more the child plays, the less time they spend in front of the screen, in front of the television screen, in front of the iPad, etc. And we all know, well, studies have shown that the more time children spend in front of the screen, they actually there's actually a higher chance for obesity, behavior problems, ADHD, and etc. And that's it from my section of our presentation. So I'm going to turn over to Dr. Campbell.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Now, I know that some of you are already writing in questions, and we are going to try to address some of these questions. So we are going to go quite quickly with our presentation so that we can have a good time for looking, a long enough period for looking at some of the questions. I'd just like to say too that even as we consider some of these points, we realize that children with exceptionalities function at different levels too. So you could have a child with a mild presentation, but you could have a child with an extreme presentation. So some of what we are saying, you're probably thinking, what that is way outside of what my child's capabilities are. So we will look at that as we go along, okay? Or when we are finished. So we are talking about the school at home, all right? So the fact of the matter is that we are realizing, or we have realized, that with everything in life, there are going to be disparities that exist. And this is what I think we are seeing in this whole COVID-19 situation. For many different reasons, these disparities are playing up. So for example, looking at the family structure, it's going to be different from a family that has, different adults in the family, father or extended family with grandmother, grandfather, probably uncles and aunts helping with the situation, as against, say, one person who has to cope with what is going on all the time. The other thing is geographically, we realize that depending on where you are located, you can get certain resources better than other persons. So of course, there are some places where Wi-Fi connection, for argument's sake, is very poor, and so it is difficult for them to access the classes and so on that they need. And well, socioeconomically, we know too that that's going to have an impact. People what they can afford to do with their children, to buy as resources for their children and so on. Parents who now have lost their jobs as a result of COVID, You know, these are different things that are happening as we speak, and the disparities are there. Now, what we are thinking now is that there are some assumptions and expectations um, with the children at home. We are thinking that, for example, the parents have an understanding of their children's specific needs as learners. That's an assumption. And I dare say that some of you are now realizing that you really didn't know as much as you thought you knew. So some things are becoming much more evident to you now. You're thinking that, oh, this is an opportunity maybe for the children to build their computer skills because they have this visual approach to teaching now and so on. Maybe that's an advantage. But we are realizing too that for some children, depending on their level of involvement, just being on this laptop or Kindle is difficult. They're having a problem navigating their way through what is happening. They're having multiple visual inputs at the same time, many different children being seen. So there are ways in which I understand you can block, for example, what the children are seeing so that they can focus a little better. I believe that at the end of the day, they will build their skills, because they're using the computer and it will become much more of a friendly thing for them, computer friendly. The fact of the matter is to that we assume that teachers have a range of materials that they are working from, and we are realizing or working with, we are realizing that teachers really have to dig deep to come up with the lessons now. Some of them have to be very creative and so on to give the lessons that they need to do. In terms of your role as parents, I'm sure that you've realized that it has changed. It's been evolving, still evolving maybe. And the fact is that there are a number of parents who have been involved in doing homeschooling for, some years maybe. And for them, well, they're not involved because they are doing homeschooling, but I think they could teach us something about what are the good things that can come out of this situation. But when you have your children with exceptional needs, it's your role is going to become much more than if you are dealing with a child who is typically developing. I'm sure you're realizing that already. If you have a child, for example, at home who is typically developing and then another one with special needs, you see the difference. So for the average parent, I think it's a new experience and it can become quite overwhelming. We realize that. As I said before at the beginning, we realized that some of our parents were saying, we're just not coping, we can't do it. McCAM is a inclusive setting, so we do have children who are typically developing, but we have a good number of children with special needs. So we are hearing what the parents are saying. In terms of your role too, I'm sure you're realizing that the rules for, of engagement with your child has had to change because now you are the teacher's assistant. You're not mommy who is just providing providing for their needs, or daddy who they can just, have a conversation with or do things with. This is now a parent who is going to have to insist that this child does schoolwork online. And so your role now as a teacher's assistant has to change a little. And so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the physical space and time, scheduled time within the homeschool environment, because I think that these two areas need some attention. Physical space, well, as I said, the COVID-19 impacts everybody. So some people have, a situation where they have a well organized home with many different rooms maybe that they can do different things in. But that might not be the reality for a lot of persons. So there is a way in which we have to create physical boundaries within that home environment for different things to happen. That little picture there that you're seeing is showing a situation where there is a mother who is obviously working from home too, and the little her child is at a desk trying to do work in the same environment. It looks fairly organized, but you may find that for some children this kind of situation would not work. They would need a space that is a quiet space, that is away from all kinds of distractions. And here we are talking about children, for example, with ADHD or children on the autism spectrum, or just any child who is very involved. You have to make the environment conducive for learning within the home. So, how you organize your space is going to be very important. The quiet space may end up being your bedroom or the child's bedroom. But of course, if you went down that road, you would have to make sure that there are not toys around or things that could distract the child in that situation. So you need them to move around, move away from that noise, because it's too distracting. Okay, so I did say before the children with ADHD and sensory integration disorder. That's probably something that people don't know, that particular diagnosis. It can stand on its own, or it can be a part of a presentation, for example, with a child who has autism spectrum disorder. So the sensory system is not functioning the way it should for these children. And you find that they are, highly distractible by just everything that is happening around them, maybe smells even. Um, they just, well, they are just highly susceptible. And I'm thinking of the ADHD child in particular. I have some of the distractions there actually, radio playing, television in the background somewhere. You don't think it is loud enough to distract, but it is. Maybe the siblings playing in another room, or a pet dog or a cat coming by and into the child's space. All of these are distractors that we have to keep at bay when we have the children within the home setting. Of course, you can see what can happen too in this picture. This child knows that the cookie jar is in the kitchen. So if you're not there, and that's another thing, because some parents are having to actually sit right there beside the child throughout the time that they are online, because they can't leave them to go off to do something else. They either can't just navigate the thing by themselves, or the distractors are there, the temptation to go do something else. Okay, so I just wanted to point out that some of the other things that should be taken into consideration is the fact that the physical space at school provides for group interactions. The children are in classes, or they are at devotions together, or they're at playtime together. So there's a lot of social interaction that takes place at school, compared to the child who is isolated at home. Some children don't even have siblings. So please remember that you are going to have to find opportunities for your child to leave the home and to go and be in settings where other children might be wanting social distancing, of course, but it's important that they're just not locked into a house all the time. They're going to miss out on that. And I dare say you parents too, you are missing out on that community involvement, because I think a lot of parents do, get very involved in their children's schools, and now you are isolated at home with your child. I know people do group chatting and that kind of thing, but I think that physical encounter doesn't, is not quite the same. Okay, so going from physical space now to talk about scheduling time within the homeschool environment. It is very important that the time that is, there for school on timeline is organized, right? It is, in fact, organized time is central to successful occupation for human beings. That is something as occupational therapists that we get very involved with, helping people to organize themselves within a time and a space situation. However, for the child at home, the regular school is the well, the predictability of school is not there any longer. Okay, and so you have to make sure that that child has their time organized for school while they are at home. So we know that there might be some disruptions, but what do we really mean by that? I think that timetabling is a big part of this organized time. So the children have to really be ready for school. I'm going back to see if I had said what I needed to say about how they need to get ready for the day. I'm just going down a little bit. Oh, okay. So timetabling is a very important part of getting that day organized. Now we are saying that for the child with exceptionalities, you as parents have to get involved with making that timetable easier for them to navigate or to understand it. And some of them may not fully understand, depending on their level of involvement. So you have to help them to transition from one activity to the next one. So a timetable with different colors can help to, help the child to recognize when they are going to have a subject. They come to associate the color with what is to happen. So PE, for example, could be yellow. Art here is red. I know it says English and so on, but it's just showing you music is a kind of a purple color there. But really, for some of the children, again, it doesn't need to have to look like this. This looks very involved, okay? But it can be a simple thing that shows one day at a time what it is that they have for each time period for the day. Some children need just pictures, so you can just post pictures for each area or each activity so they know what it is that is to happen for at that particular time. If you have the pictures on Velcro, of course, you can manipulate it as you go through the day. So you can take the Velcro pieces, the pictures off, and then show that, for example, for the rest of the day, you only have two or three other activities. So this is something you can do that will help your child to probably understand a little better what is expected of them for the day. And this is what I was highlighting, the preparing for the day. I was trying to find this. Yeah. You know, because they're at home, they are still at school. And I think that we really need to help our children to understand this by doing some simple things like, okay, you have a timetable that includes getting up time too. So time for waking up, time for having breakfast, time for getting dressed. And as much as possible, what I'm saying is that that routine for the day needs to be very similar to what would happen if they were going out to regular school. Proper grooming, I think, is very important. For some children, just even wearing the uniform of the school that they go to could help them with making the adjustment. Okay? And I am going to say that that timetable, the scheduling of time must include breaks. Okay? Because I think Ms. Ray Candice was saying a little earlier about some of the negatives from having a child sitting at a tablet or a laptop or for long periods of time. There are some physical and mental fatigue can set in, okay? And there are some adverse effects. Okay, I think that for this, what I really want to highlight is that while you are there with your child doing the different, activities as the teacher has organized for the day, you can tell when your child is getting overwhelmed, okay? And if a teacher had the children in front of her, she would be able to say, okay, John, this has reached the point where he can't do anymore. you have to now be that person. Okay, so if your child can't cope any longer anymore, you can, I think you can give them a break. That should be accepted. And of course, it could be a water break, it could be just to go to the bathroom and come back, but
Or just to get up and walk around.
or just to get up and walk around. We thought about that as well, but I was saying, you know, you have to also keep it real too, but it is important because when the child goes back to school, then they are not going to be able to get up and walk around the classroom, obviously, or, you know, but we can still teach them that when they are in school and they need a break, right? That there are some things they can do. They can't just get up and sit down again instead of just walking around. But that ability to, you know, or the opportunity to make, have a break so that they don't get overwhelmed is very important. And I just wanted to say that it is difficult for the teachers to do the teaching online. I believe that they, you know, have to do a lot of preparations, and it can become very overwhelming for them as well to keep a track of what is going on. So take a break. Um, and I am highlighting here that you, parents, have to take a break too. Okay, see, actually, see a little, the pictures here, we are showing that the children are doing different things for the break. They're blowing bubbles. One child actually went outside to play. One was outside with her mom for a short period of time. Somebody said to me, what happened if they don't have a yard or anything? And my point is, I think we were talking about that. If they even go downstairs, or go outside if you don't have stairs and just go out, you know, into the parking lot or something, you get some sunlight. And we know the benefits of sunlight, you know, physically as well as mentally. You need the break as a parent too. This is what this is saying. You need a little time for yourself. And so I would encourage you to do that. Actually, I thought I had another picture, but maybe this is where it is here. Okay, there it is. Um, we are going into looking at caring for yourself. And so this is where we are looking at how you take the break. What are some of the things you can do? It's not a lot that we are telling you, but we think that the few strategies that we give you today will be important in helping you to cope going forward. So we're basically saying that, yeah, you as a parent, you've had to have your role redefined, and there are new expectations. You've had now to learn how to juggle your time for the children. The ones with exceptionalities, as we said before, take a lot more out of you, but you may have other children as well. Time for your chores, time for rest, time for leisure. So, how do you really take care of yourself? Right? I'm going to ask Miss Ray to do a couple of these for us, some of these techniques.
Okay. So there are a few things that you can do for self-care. Some of the simplest things you could do is actually just talk to someone. Either it's your spouse, it could be just a friend or another parent who, you know, has a similar experience like yourself. You can have a you day. This could be actually going out to the spa, or you can make your own spa at home. Give yourself a penny, give yourself a money. That's something that you can do for yourself. And I would say it's very important for you to join the associations that are geared towards helping the specific needs of your child. So, for example, you have JASA, which is
Jamaica Association.
no, Jamaica Autism Support Association,
Right.
and you have the association JAID, which is for intellectual disabilities, and you have JASLD, which is for learning JACLD, which is for learning disabilities, and of course, there's always McCAM. All right. So before we go into Q&A, I'm just gonna go through just a simple breathing exercise. It's kind of a meditation. So we're gonna do just one round of practice here, and this is something that you can do with your child as well, especially if it's a child that has a tendency to throw tantrums. All right, so this is, as I said before, it's a breathing exercise. So a lot of times we hold tension in our body whenever we are anxious or stressed, and we're not even aware of it. So the purpose of this exercise is for you to notice the difference in your body when you're tense and when you're relaxed. And again, this is something you can do with the children. So it goes like this. It focuses on 5 body parts. I wish I had some music. Some calming. So you can just play some calming music whenever you're gonna do this. And the instructions are always the same, but it's 5 different body parts. So I want you to close your eyes and listen to my voice and just follow my instructions, okay? Tense, close your eyes. Tense your feet by curling your toes. Hold it for 1, 2, 3, 4. Relax. Deep breath in, out. Tense your legs by pulling your toes up and pointing towards your head. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Relax. Take a deep breath in and out. Tense your stomach. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Relax. Deep breath in, out. Tense your hands by squeezing it into a fist. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Relax. Deep breath in, out. Tense your shoulders by pulling them up towards your ears. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Deep breath in, out. Open your eyes. Okay, that was the end of the exercise. It's very simple. It's something that you can do more than once, of course, until you feel completely calm.
Right. And just to realize too that the environment that you create, at times, just with music, you were just saying you wish you had some calming music. You can create an environment for your home by having the type of music that is
Right.
calming in general. Okay. All right. So we've come to the end of our brief presentations, and I'm going to hand over back now to Mrs. Armstrong.
Thank you to the presenters for those strategies. We trust that they will be useful to you and helpful to you. We thank you too, to you, the participants of this. And we thank you for the positive comments that we are seeing coming in. We now want to turn to some questions, to your questions. But before that, I just want to do just a little bit of housekeeping. We just want to let you know that this session has been recorded and it will be available via YouTube and email. So if you want this recorded session to be emailed to you, please send us your email addresses. Also, a document will be forwarded to you with some tips, some strategies. And also a feedback survey will also be sent to you, and we really would appreciate if you would complete the survey. And separate and apart from the survey is a poll which you can find right here in this Zoom session. And we ask you to just complete that poll. It's just a 3 or 4 questions, I think, after the question and answer time. So right now we would like to just go to some of your questions. Now we're not sure that we will be able to address all of the questions, but we will really try to include any answers that we're not able to complete in some of the information that we can send out afterwards. But we're going to try and get through as many as we can. Okay, so we have a question here. What do we do about the bored child? A child who gets distracted easily and the parent who is busy working at home. So we have a parent who with a 10-year-old child who is really not interested, she says, in school-related learning. And she's finding, and the child finds it difficult to sit all the time. And she's finding it difficult to supervise him and do her work at the same time. Ladies?
Yeah, that one sounds like
Okay, so let me start.
Right.
So I think this goes back to creating the rules. So a part of having the rules chart, you want to have specific behaviors that you expect from the child. So you said the child is easily distracted and she doesn't want to sit down to complete her work. So one of the rules is you must complete all assignments, or if you want to break it down into chunks of target goals for the day, then, for example. So in order to enforce this rule, you must have rewards and consequences.
That's right.
So the reward for finishing a specific task could be something like you get to pick your favorite snack for lunchtime or something like that. And then the consequence would be, okay, you didn't do it, so you don't get that snack. You get to eat a salad for lunch or something like that.
Right.
That's one.
You have to create
advice.
incentives.
Right, creating incentives to get the child to do the necessary tasks.
Right.
Anything?
No, I was just wondering, is it that the child has a diagnosis of like ADHD, or is it that the child, is not following what is going on with the online teaching?
Right.
They're
So
finding
are they
it
falling
overwhelming.
behind
Yes.
or something?
Are they finding it overwhelming? So you have to understand probably what the basis of the problem is. But maybe you, as you just said, you have to chunk it sometimes too.
Right.
So you want to do your work. So maybe you have to give him some time, the child some time, like maybe 15 minutes to do something, along with them. And then you go off to go do what you have to do, and then come back to it afterwards. Yeah, I think you have to just try different things to say. It would be interesting to find out why they are not interested in what is going
Right. Because
on
if they
online.
have a particular learning disability,
Mhm.
then we would expect them to fall behind, and that means they would need additional assistance.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, do we have another one?
Yes, I have another question here.
Oh, sorry. Before you go on, you can try recording the session so
Yes.
that you can go back to it at a later time.
Afterwards, yes.
Okay, we have another question here from a mother who has a son who is autistic and 6 years old and does stemming when he's excited or happy. And she's asking for tips about curbing that.
Okay. So stemming really means self-stimulatory kind of behaviors that you see. The child could be rocking backwards and forwards, or um, playing with the hands, snapping the fingers, running up and down. These are activities that the children have a lot of times because they have sensory integration problems. Okay. One of the things we have found is that intervention for sensory integration, um, is doing calming type things with them. So brushing, um, playing with Play-Doh, working, with things that have, you know, tactile type of stimulation and so on. It's just that when they're doing that kind of thing, running up and down, the self-stimming is the body or the brain seeking out those experiences. So we have to give it to them, organize it and give it to them. So maybe he will benefit from some swinging, if you have a swing, you can do the brushing, as I said, very much so. You can put some weights on for short periods of time if the child is sitting. So sometimes even just having a telephone directory or something just placed in the lap while the child is sitting and doing an activity helps to ground them. So those are a couple of things that can help with the stimming. But giving them purposeful activities to do would help, because it's when they are not doing anything that they are likely to be doing the self-stimming.
And that's when the replacement or the alternative behaviors come in. So, for example, if it's a child that likes to bite their fingers or bite their lips, then you can give them something to chew on. So it just depends on what the behavior is. You have to try to find something to replace it that still gives them the same sensation.
Right.
Okay, we have a question here. Are classroom rules better stated as do or do not?
Do, for sure. You always tell a child what they're supposed to do rather than what they're not supposed to do.
Right.
And that the point of the matter is that sometimes you tell them, don't do so and so, but they really don't know what they're supposed to do instead. So just like what you said a little earlier, if you are in a situation at home where the child is running instead of walking, you don't say don't run, you say walking feet, because the child knows that when you say walking feet, it's because you want them to walk instead of run. So you always tell a child what you want them to do instead of just what they are not supposed to do.
Okay, so a question about the exceptionally brilliant child. How can a parent prepare for such a child at home?
Okay. We talked about that, didn't we?
Just a brief.
Yes, just a little bit we were talking about. Because the fact is that when people talk about exceptionality, they tend to think of the things that are happening that are considered probably a disorder or, something negative. But a lot of times, children who are gifted are also children who exhibit behavioral problems because they are not being stimulated enough. Those children need an acceleration program. And this is why they get problems sometimes in the classroom, because they have to be doing a lot more than what is being set out for them to do. So what you have to do is to have multiple things for that child to engage in doing different types of activities. So they finish one thing, what can they go on to doing next? The downtime is where you get the problem, because they are not doing anything, or they do something and it's very boring. So have to always be challenging them. You want to add anything to that?
No,
That's basically what I think. You have to find multiple things
and
for
you
them
can
to do.
also try something outside of academic school, like art.
Oh yes,
Yeah. Or any other activity.
Right. And they like projects, I think. I would find something that is like a project that they have to work on for a period of time. So, they can see how it develops. They can investigate the subject. They can put it together, in some form, so that it is something that they can show at the end of the day that they've done. But just simply doing an activity for a short period of time because it is an academic activity can be very, boring for them after a time.
Okay, we have another question about from a parent. She's asking, or he's asking, for specific interventions for a child with cerebral palsy that a parent can do.
Specific? What's that again? Specific
interventions.
Oh, Well, it is very difficult to do that because we would have to know how involved that child is. Okay, if it is a child with, well, cerebral palsy, as you know, is a physical presentation. So the children normally have either increased muscle tone or low muscle tone. Okay, and some of them, that muscle tone is so increased that they can't even move very freely. You know, so their motor skills are usually what are affected more than anything else. But to give you some ideas, the only thing I can say is that you have to remember that these children, mentally, cognitively, they can do very well. So you look at them in terms of their physical state and you think, oh, this is a child who is not going to process information. A lot of times they are bright as spark going on, with their lives, but are being inhibited in the way they live because of their physical presentation. So you have to find the same types of, cognitively appealing exercises for them to do. But for me to give you an idea of what to do with the child in terms of their physical presentation, would have to see that child to be able to know what would work for them.
Okay, we are actually coming to the end of our hour, believe it or not, but I want to just squeeze in one more question. My son is 7 years old, in a 5-year-old class, and he's very anxious when it comes to reading. He hates it. He has ADHD, and I try to make it fun for him, but he really doesn't gravitate towards it. He can read the words if he tries, but he's never interested in reading. Is there anything I can do?
Go ahead.
Okay, so there are reading programs. One of the programs that we would normally recommend at McCAM is Read the Mood Bell. And some of our teachers here actually are trained to teach children who have problems with reading. Some of the other things that you could do is maybe try doing a story time every night before bed. So that becomes a part of his routine. It's a very simple story, maybe even 1 or 2 pages. Um, what else?
Well, the thing is that does the child have a learning disability as well?
She said that.
Yes.
She does. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Okay. So the ADHD plus having a learning disability. Yeah, so it is challenging, but I think those things that you said there, where you want the child to be, interested in reading by not just reading words, maybe, but it's a story that they can get involved with, because or they can make up their own story and write it out in story form and read it back.
Right.
Um, you can do picture reading for a 7-year-old, as well. So you really want to just make reading exciting, because if it is just looking in a book that is just having just pure words for argument's sake and they're struggling with the words, then it's going to be difficult. But for a 7-year-old, if it is a book that has pictures alongside, so that they're reading the words, but they can look at the pictures as well to see what it is saying. I would say that is definitely
And they
one
can
of
try
the
things
things.
like Hook on Phonics.
Yes, there are resources that
Right.
are there. But that child could really be struggling because of the particular disability, learning disability that they have. I mean, reading disability that they have.
Right,
So,
and you can come to McCAM for assistance
yeah, you
with that,
need,
because, as I said, we have teachers who are trained in the Linda Model program who
right.
teach children with that specific learning
Yeah,
disability.
a lot of times you need to know particular strategies that work. Teachers with special ed backgrounds and so on also would know how to teach a child. But I think it's really about getting them interested in the reading, because they can relate to what they are reading as well.
And you can try looking for special apps in the App Store that might assist with that as well.
In the app
The App
store,
Store on the phone.
oh, on the phone. Okay, all right. I see these young people with their
Well,
tech heads.
ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our 1 hour session. We really wanted to keep it to the 1 hour because we know that you are busy. But we hope to have many more similar sessions like this.
Right.
Again, we just want to remind you to complete the survey that is sent and also the poll, if you may. And we also just want to highlight a 30-second video that you might not have noticed
So
amongst
funny.
the presentations. So please go back to those presentations. They will be made available to you. And have a look at this little 30-second video. And please remember that McCAM has a lot of specialized resources. There's a lot of intervention programs, a lot of therapy programs that are offered. And we invite you to get in touch with McCAM. You'll be surprised at what resources that they have here. So please find those contact numbers. We will send them to you as well. Get in touch with McCAM and they will be more than happy to assist you.
I should just add too that there are other agencies, as we said out there before, that also offer, so we're not saying we're the only place. There are other places that are there, but we are happy for you to come here at McCAM too.
And so again, we thank you. We thank you, Dr. Watson Campbell. We thank you, Ms. Candice Ray. We thank you, participants, parents. God bless you. And we will get through this situation. God is in control. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, oh no.
I need to stop the ramping. I need to stop the plane. I need to stop the ramping. Everything I don't know, my friends know the word. Everything I don't know, I only have plane, ramping, YouTube in my head.
If you're still on, please remember to do the poll. You can do that right now. Just go to the section called polls and you can complete those questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we are saying bye for now, but as Mrs. Armstrong says, we are hoping to continue with these webinars going forward. So let us know the topics that you are interested in. Okay?